Hi, it's Dorothy Guiding with Scrapbooking Quebec, and today I'm participating in the monthly YouTube collaboration for the love of crafting and sharing. You're going to find links to all the other participants below, so be sure to check them out. Our prompt for September is kit love. So we can use a scrapbooking kit or create one from our stash. Now, I'm a huge fan of both types of kits. For this video though, I'm going to be using the July 2019 Hip Kit Club kit that I bought on sale, probably on International Scrapbooking Day. Now, if you have never been part of a kit club and you're curious, you may want to check out the Hip Kit Club's Cyber Monday or International Scrapbooking Day sales. On both of these days, they sell off their past kits at a reduced price. So it's a really fun way to try out kits and to get some happy mail. Now here's what I'm going to be using, and this actually is a really good representation of a hip kit. I have removed some of the paper because I simply pre-selected the paper for this project. But all of the embellishments from the kit are there. And this is a really well coordinated kit, but all the material comes from different manufacturers. I have Pink Fresh Studio, there's Echo Park, Webster's Pages, One Canoe 2, and even some Hip Kit Club exclusives. So it's really a fun way. And when you're part of the kit club, obviously it's the latest and greatest. It's the new material. I'm showing you what I prepared in advance. A frame style foundation with 3 sheets of paper. The top one isn't adhered yet, and I gutted the other 2 of them. I also have the paper, I matted my photos, and I have a tray full of embellishments. And if you want to see how I make a frame style foundation where I gut the back, I will link up a tutorial that's on my channel below. Now what I'm going to do is cut my printed paper up into a whole bunch of squares. Now I'm going to use my Big Shot and a die that measures 3 3/4 inches. Obviously you can cut this out with a straight trimmer as well. And the actual size of the squares really isn't important here. Now what I'm going to be doing with these squares is kind of creating a diagonal checkerboard on that top piece of the foundation page. If your squares are smaller, all you're going to do is use more squares. And if your squares are larger than what I'm cutting, you're going to use fewer squares. That's it. Now, I only do a few of these on camera, and then off camera I continue cutting. I end up cutting 6 squares of each paper, so I have 18 squares there, but I don't quite use them all. Now what you see me doing is placing my photos on an angle just to find out what angle is pleasing to my eye. And then what I did was I drew a pencil drawn line across the page at that angle. I'm completely covering up this paper, which measures 11 1/4 inch by 11 1/4 inch with adhesive. And I paid special attention to the outside of this square. And now I'm simply using that pencil drawn line as a guide to adhere these squares across the page. Now I adhere a bunch of them, and as you can see, they kind of bleed off one side. Well, they eventually bleed off the entire page, but I'm focusing more on one side because I'm going to end up putting it in my trimmer, trimming off the papers that bleed off the side, and then I continue adhering, and I do the same around all 4 sides. My trimmer gets a little bit messy here. It wasn't too bad. You can do this with scissors as well, but I find a straight trimmer gives a really nice straight cut. So as you can see, I'm continuing doing this. Also, I have done this where the squares are kind of straight across the page. That's nice too, but this way on the diagonal, it's much easier. It's so much more forgiving because all the squares kind of bleed off the page and they don't have to be perfectly lined up. When I do it when it's straight across the page, it's like they never quite look right around the edges. Now what you see me doing is filling in the little pieces on the edges, and as you can see, that is why it's important to have adhesive all around the edges. I'm just taking the scraps of paper that are left and I'm filling in the areas that haven't been covered. I did add a bit more adhesive, and what I did was I use that ATG runner, and I almost never use that adhesive, but it is a great adhesive for this technique. And what I did was I just rolled it over that area that hasn't been covered up yet, and I protected the other squares with scraps of paper. So all I have is that little tiny bit, and you can see it's such a small piece. If there wasn't adhesive there, it wouldn't have stayed. Anyway, now what I'm going to do is adhere my checkerboard to the frame foundation. Obviously, that checkerboard, you can do it on a 12 by 12 piece as well. I do like the frame. I think it does add a little bit of relief to the eye. Maybe I'm just imagining that. Now what I'm going to do is create a grouping in the middle, almost a mini page, and I'm going to place this on a piece of vellum. You may notice all measurements have been on the screen. I'm doing it, it's going to be quite subtle, because I don't want to cover up all those squares that I've adhered to the page. I find it quite pretty, but at the same time, I do want to kind of determine an area in the middle of this layout for my photos, title, text, and all of that stuff. So I'm more or less happy with that. And now what I'm going to do is determine a spot for my journaling as well as my title. Now those are Project Lifestyle cards. They're actually Christmas themed, but you're not going to see it once they're tucked in. And I'm going to use a tag topper punch by Stampin' Up! Just to turn those into tags. Now you can make tags easy enough. You just need 2-inch strips of paper in this case. Trim the corners on an angle and punch a hole in the middle. Now this is a title sheet from Pink Fresh Studio that came in the kit. So all I'm doing is cutting out one of the titles because it's on transparent paper, and that way I can play around with placement a bit, and I'm thinking of putting it at the bottom of the page, almost like on a shelf. I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is adhere the photos, the vellum, and the tags to the paper, but I am going to leave that title separate for a little bit. And another thing, just to point out with a kit club. For example, someone else did the shopping for me. I paid, but someone else did the selections, and normally I wouldn't have selected that title, but I end up quite liking it. So sometimes it makes you try something that maybe you wouldn't have tried. I'm also tucking doilies, those are from my stash, in 3 areas in a triangle around my photos, a visual triangle. So I put one underneath the journaling tags, one underneath the vellum around the title, and one at the top. What I do know is I want to embellish in 3 areas, but I do want to keep it subtle. I want it to be around the photos, not necessarily around the entire page. I want the focus to be on the photos, everything in the middle, but I don't want the embellishments to take up too much visual space because I find the paper placement and that checkerboard look already does. So I'm additioning all the different embellishments that are part of this kit, the ephemera, the puffy stickers, those layered stickers from One Canoe 2, and I'm really not happy with a lot of it, to be perfectly honest. All I know is that I want it to be subtle, but I want it to be there. I end up going with those layered stickers from One Canoe 2, but what I'm doing is altering them. The one there by the tags had this yellow thing in the middle. I cut it out. I actually removed 1 layer of the foam adhesive because these had 2 layers of foam adhesive and they were quite thick, too thick for my liking. So anyway, I removed one of the layers of foam stickers. I removed the middle of that flower and replaced it with an enamel dot, and I'm happier with that. The other one I actually cut apart. There were 3 flowers there, so I cut it apart so that there were 1 flower and then another grouping of 2 that I'm putting at the top, and I took the leaves, cut those apart as well. I used some of them at the bottom and some of them at the top, and again I'm replacing the middles with enamel dots because those ones had like a really bumpy brad with a pearl and they just stuck up too much for my liking. I guess what I'm saying is I received embellishments that I didn't particularly like, but that's okay. I altered them and I ended up liking them. So now what I'm doing is I'm adding some reinforcers to these tags. So all I did was I took a 1/2 inch circle punch as well as a hole punch. I did the hole first and then the 1/2-inch circle around it, and it created a ring. I adhered it to those tags, and now I'm adding a bit of twine. And basically my page is done. All I did was, you're going to see in a moment, at the very bottom underneath that photo with the food, I added 2 little pieces of ephemera. They were little expressions, as well as that puffy heart. There, you see it on the screen right now. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't subscribed to Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be absolutely thrilled if you did. Also, I'm going to put a link to the Hip Kit Club below as well. Like I said, if you have never been part of a kit club, you may want to check out their sales. I personally have been part of a kit club for the past 3 years, and right now it's part of the Secret Not Secret Kit Club, which is really a fantastic community. Anyway, also check out all the other participants in this series and see what kits they are using. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.